Testing, 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 testing. Oh Lord. What's going on, guys? Just editing some photos from this last weekend. Had a pretty crazy weekend. Full of cars, which was nice. Did a photo shoot with a G80, R33, R34, and a R35, which was pretty cool. Just gonna edit some of the videos and then I don't know, just chill. If you guys wanna hang out and just watch, whatever. Figured it'd be just something to do, something to stream, which would be nice. And I need to set this up. Something to stream, which would be nice. And I need to set this up. Sounds echoey. I don't know what's going on with it. Audio input. I don't know what's going on. Something to stream, which would be nice. I need to set this up. Sounds echoey. I don't know what's going on with it. Audio input. I don't know what's going on. Something to stream, which would be nice. Testing. Testing. Testing, testing. 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 Okay, there we go. Testing, testing. 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 Okay, there we go. All right, so what I was saying earlier is basically I over the weekend had a photo shoot with R33, R34, R35, and a G80. And these are the photos from that couple of days ago. So it was a crazy shoot. It was so much fun. Got a bunch of roller videos and stuff like that. But yeah, I just figured I would come on here. I usually just edit by myself or hang out with a friend and edit and stuff like that. But I figured, might as well just come on here and edit, chill, listen to a podcast or something. I hope the podcast doesn't get flagged. That would really suck. But I also have, if you can see here, another shoot that I did that I need to edit. So that's not the best picture. But it was a NSX that I did a photo shoot with. So we'll do that as well. But just figured we'd start here. So I already kind of started a little bit, but ignore that.
She now shares with us how it felt to leave the sport she loved.
I was like, what the hell am I going to do? I've got to fill a £25 million hole here to keep
£25 million
going
hole
racing in 2020. I literally went and I had a conversation with somebody and I said, please, can you help me? And you can imagine going and asking somebody for 25 million quid. I did used to kind of almost walk around with my head down in those last few years.
I really love this photo, actually.
I felt shame. And then when my dad died, it was like,
I wish the R35 was up there.
Left.
But it still looks really cool with these three.
Life changes. I did do the best that I could with what I had, and I think a lot of people don't understand that.
When did you realise it wasn't going to be all right?
I still get quite emotional about it because.
Oh, he's out of it.
High performance.
I think I screwed up on this one.
Let's talk about how you feel this.
I thought I saw too high and didn't realize it from the last shoot.
It's still, even though it's been quite a long time since I left the sport, I still find it really difficult. Last week or the week before, when they had that mega launch at the O2, I wasn't invited. I was invited to a dinner the night before, which was just wonderful, but I didn't go to that, and I didn't really think too much about it. But I
don't even know if I really want to even change the sky or anything. I mean, I feel like this photo is almost perfect, just as is.
No deal or something like that. I'm a game show like nut.
Less is more kind of feeling
the
here.
launch came on. And I looked at it, and I normally avoid things like to do with F1 on telly like the plague, because I can't cope with it. It's too upsetting.
More blue is nice.
I know that's really lame, but it is. And anyway, it was there. And like, once you've turned something like that on, you can't stop watching, can you? And I couldn't. And honestly, like, the tears just came rolling down my face, because it's just like, I miss it enormously. So I think any time of the year,
that's so
with F1,
perfect. I love this photo. This is great.
Pulls at my heartstrings.
A lot of these photos I'm a little iffy about. Honestly, it wasn't my best shoot. It was hectic. There's a lot of things going on.
But I did.
Because,
it was my whole life.
Why do you think it's lame?
I think I failed at it, to be honest. I need to create a new folder.
Admit that start crying because you watched the F1 and makes you weren't there. My dad said to my mum once, "Emotion is weak, Virginia," and that's kind of stuck in my head. You're not stiff upper lip. Typical British way. So I think it's a bit lame, isn't it? Get over it. Life moves on.
Life does move on, but it was such a huge part of your life. What is it that makes you emotional?
I just miss it.
Yeah.
I miss. You were in the sport as well for a long time. You know what it's like. There's something magical about Formula One that almost, it's very essence. You can't quite describe it. I don't know what it is. I felt very at home in it. I felt it was my place and my family. And, I lost that. The people around me at Williams, I considered very much my family. And those cars as well. So when I went to Miami, which last year for the Grand Prix, which is the first race I've been to since I left, I kind of held it together and I was absolutely fine. And then when I went into the garage for the first time and I saw the cars, it was like, I need a moment. I had to walk out the garage, and I had another moment.
Those
bad cars,
boy.
as much as they're inanimate objects, to me, they're very real and they have a heart and a soul. Again, I know that sounds really silly, but that is how I genuinely feel about them. They feel very much part of the fabric of my family. And I think they encapsulate everything that my dad was. And obviously my dad passed away and I was enormously close to him and I miss him. It's like missing your family that you don't get to see anymore.
I think if you just say, well, I miss Formula One, you're perfectly entitled to be emotional about that. But I was on the train coming down here, and we've known each other, let's just, 15, 20 years, right? Longer. That's scary. I always think in my head, I was about to say, has it been 10 years? So we would have first met in the late 2008, something like that. When I first got involved in Formula One. So
it's a long time.
The best part of 20 years that I've known you. And I was coming down here today.
See if we can do anything with this R34.
Podcasts. I was thinking, what do I still not feel I know about Claire? And I thought, and actually I get almost a bit emotional thinking about this, because I can't even begin to imagine how it is from your perspective that, you were given an incredible job, lost your mum, lost the team, lost your dad. And this was all in like a 7 or 8 year period. I don't know how I would cope with that amount.
I don't know if that horizon's even straight.
It's a Formula One team, whether it's my friends in the world I've grown up in.
Yeah. I took over the team the day after my mum's funeral. My mum got very sick and she kind of fought it off for 3 years. And then over the winter of 2012, we knew that she wasn't going to last a whole lot longer. And it was that time that I was asked to take over the team. And we kind of tried to coincide me taking over.
Because the car's on
the Australian Grand Prix,
an angle, like the road is angled up, and it's screwing up the
my mum actually passed away on the same day
perspective,
that
and
my
my
dad had his
angle on the
accident
car
on
wasn't
March 8th,
good.
which was extraordinary. And then, so we postponed me actually being launched, I suppose, as TP at a Grand Prix until after her funeral. And so we had my mum's funeral on the Thursday. I was due to fly on the Friday.
Let's try it.
And then my PA, after literally said goodbye to the last guest at the wake, phoned me and said, "Claire, I'm so sorry, but your flight tomorrow has been cancelled. The only time you could go is Saturday, but you won't get in until Sunday morning or tonight. What do you want to do?" And so I was like, well, what would my mum want me to do? And she would say, life goes on. And so, yeah, I went and did that. Like I got on the flight that evening and went and ran the team. But that's, I suppose, demonstrates how close, we all are as a family to Williams. But, there was, and then I suppose Williams for me was my therapy. Losing my mom, I'm
You can
quite like
fix
my
the
dad. I bury my head in
sky.
the sand, and work for me was very cathartic. And I had a job to do. I wanted to almost rebuild the team in my mum's honor, because I knew that she was quite heartbroken when she died, that the team was doing so badly at the time. And then,
Wonder
I
if I
looked after the
can.
team, I suppose, for my dad, because my dad wasn't in great shape either for those years that I was in charge. And then, then I lost the team and I lost my dad. I lost so much of my life, but I've had a wonderful life and I can't complain. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons, that you must always appreciate what you have in the moment, because you never know when you're going to lose it. But it's been a massive
Maybe like
transformation,
that.
I suppose, for me, because, that day when I left Monza, my last race in September 2020, I suddenly was faced with a whole new world.
Yeah.
And my identity had been so wrapped up in Williams. And, I was Frank Williams's daughter till the age of about 30. And then I suddenly when I became DTP, I got my own identity and I was
I don't
Claire
know
Williams.
how I feel about this.
But it was all wrapped around Formula One. And now I've had to go out into the big wide world and work out who I am.
And who are you?
Shadow.
Oh, I'm still working that out. I think I'm probably a little bit of a, I think there's always a bit of a shadow of Formula One around me. I'm still quite heavily identified with that. But I'm forging
I
a
don't
new
know, man.
life for myself that I struggle with sometimes, to kind of not be a part of that Formula One world anymore. But there is so much outside of Formula One, and I'm actually a really simple person. I like nothing more than being at home.
I
I've
don't
always been that
know.
way. And we did a big house move last year. We moved to the South Downs, and I get to go dog walking every day in forest. And I'm normally a trail
Kinda
runner up
like
until I
it.
broke my ankle doing it last
Let
year.
me
So
let me
running
come back
is
to it.
massive,
Let me
but
export
I
it
like being at
as
home. I'm a
is, so
homebody.
we
I
have
like
it.
making sure my house looks all pretty, and
Let's edit
I'm
something
a mum
else
and I'm a
and come
wife,
back to
and I
it. See
wasn't a
what we
very good one of
think.
those. And
I
that's
don't like
first and
this shot.
foremost my job now, is to make sure I'm a damn sight better than I ever was doing that when I was in Formula One.
Why were you not a good one?
Because you can't have it all. And I know that's controversial, but I thought you could. And I learned very quickly that I don't think you can. I think you have to make choices in life, and you have to make sacrifices, certainly if you're running a Formula One team. That's
Did I
why
sharpen this?
I didn't
I
have
did.
a child
I?
until
Yeah.
I was, quite late. I had Nate when I was 40. It's because people told me when I took over the team, well, don't even think about having a baby now. It's Formula One or a family.
Did they actually say that out loud?
Yeah. Yes, they did.
And how did that feel?
Well, it was back in like 2011, 2012, and people said things like that then, and it was absolutely fine. I mean, that was hardly, one of the worst things that was ever said to me during my time in Formula One. You just, you get on with it. That's just part and parcel of life. So, I did leave a lot of stuff late, and when you are running a Formula One team, your focus has to be your Formula One team, and kind of everything comes secondary. I did the best job I could being a wife and a mother, but they're my priority now, and making up for that lost time. And my poor long-suffering husband, I hope, certainly has forgiven me for the crap that I gave him while I was running that team.
This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp. Let me tell you about something I did recently, which I'd
Do I
love
do
to
the
put a
sun
stop
thing
to.
again?
Comparing myself
Maybe
to
do
others.
a
You've probably
radial
all done it.
gradient.
Scrolling through your
Yeah.
social feed, it can be hard not to, but here's the thing. Comparison can be the thief of joy. Therapy can help you focus on what you want instead of what others have, so you can actually start living your best life. And as the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. So stop comparing and start focusing with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/performance
like
today.
So it kind of
to get
matches
10%
the
off your
vibe of
first
the
month.
last photo,
That's
so it the set kind of goes together. Maybe.
/performance. Before we talk about what happened at Williams and your life in motorsport, can you explain to me your relationship with regret?
God, that's a I've never been asked that before. That's a really difficult question.
Because we know the
I
sun's
think
coming in.
It can be a really complex relationship.
Yeah.
And obviously during,
Bring that up.
I think hindsight, regret
Oh.
is such an easy
Oh, no.
emotion and you can get really easily lost in it. And I try really hard not to do that. There are so many things that I could really easily and simply sit here and go, well, I regret doing X, Y, and Z. I regret the fact that I had to sell the team. I regret, you know, did I put enough effort and time into the whole thing? You know, all that kind of stuff. But all I can ever say to myself is, at the time, I did the absolute best that I could with the best intentions in my heart.
I kind of like that.
And I think that's all we can do in life.
Good.
You know, and so I sit there and I go, well, if I know that I did that, and I absolutely know that I gave Williams everything, every single fibre of my being I gave to that team,
too blue
then
on
how
this
can I
side.
regret that? Things went wrong that were out of my control, or they were, but I thought I had made the best decision with the information that I had at the time. And so why live with regret? I think regret can lead to bitterness, and I've been down the bitter road, and it is not good, and I don't want to go back there.
You've just summed up what we've learned in over 300 conversations on this show.
Right.
Damien, who I sometimes co-host with, and we've nailed high performance down as the best you can, where you are with what you've got.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you feel you did that.
Yeah, I did do the best that I could with what I had. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. It's so easy to be, my CEO at the time, the brilliant Mike O'Driscoll, used to say, oh, it's so easy being a Monday morning armchair quarterback, in his kind of half American accent that he had. And, you know, it's so true. We all judge everybody, don't we? It's so easy to do it, but nobody walks in your shoes. So nobody really has a right to. Nobody understands what you're going through at the time, what you're having to deal with, what are the circumstances involved. So why are we judging everybody for that? I did everything that I could for Williams in the moment with what I had. And Formula One at the time that I was in the sport, you know, wasn't an easy environment.
I have no idea what I'm doing
take away
here.
the fact that we may or may not have made bad decisions internally, but equally outside of our team, the sport was not what it is today. It was in a really difficult place, or a challenging environment. It was a really harsh.
What do you mean by that?
Well, you know, the rules were incredibly complex. I know that they still are. But if you got them wrong, you could spend your way out of it because there was no cost cap. And the bigger teams just every year came into the sport with a bigger checkbook, you know, the likes of Red Bull and Mercedes. So if things weren't going right, you just threw more money at it. If you're an independent team like Williams, like we were, and we were one of the last remaining family-owned independent teams in the sport, how do you do that? Because your whole income is based on sponsorship and prize fund money.
When did you realise it wasn't going to be all right?
In the kind of first quarter of 2020. So at the end of the last quarter of 2019, our title sponsor, Rocket, started some shenanigans.
Boom.
You know, your title sponsor brings the biggest chunk of income. So we lost that, but we spent 3 months fighting for it, and it just never materialised. And now, you know, everybody knows we've won our battle in court against them. Yeah. And so we had this massive gap. So I was like, what the hell am I going to do? You know, I've got to fill a 20 million, 25 million pound hole here to keep going racing in 2020. Anyway, I came up with a little brainwave, and someone very kindly bailed us out. And I literally went and I had a conversation with somebody, and I said, please, can you help me? Over breakfast one morning. I mean, you can imagine going and asking somebody for 25 million quid. And they said yes.
Wow.
And I still get quite emotional about it because, you know, that man saved my team. I wrote him a letter afterwards because I was always taught to write thank you letters. Yeah. And it just felt like, what do? You don't send someone, you can't send someone, here, have a bottle of wine, thanks very much for bailing my Formula One team out. But it was like, I just wrote a thank you letter.
And what did you write in that letter?
I can't remember the actual words, but I thought, is he just going to read it and go, what Wally? Why do you write someone a thank you letter for lending the net? But he is incredibly gracious human. And I thought that, I couldn't believe it when I walked away from that table. I thought, oh my God, I've done it, because I wasn't expecting him to say yes. I was like, oh my God,
What was that feeling like?
I was like, blinking Nora, how have I just done that? That's incredible. And I phoned Mike and I phoned my husband and I said, we've got the money. We're okay. We can go racing. And so we all thought, okay. I mean, we still needed more, but I knew the cost cap was coming in because I'd spent 3 years lobbying for it along with some other TPs. I knew F1 were very much behind it. And we then started hearing about COVID and this weird, crazy thing that was going on in the Far East, but then was kind of rippling its way through Europe and Italy and the like. And we were about to head to Australia. And we were all kind of questioning, are we going? Are we going? Are we not? Should we? And we got there and it was all kind of all hell broke loose. And then obviously everybody knows what happened. And but that time I wasn't really thinking, well, this could be the end of Williams for us. This could be our final nail. I was just thinking, right, what do I got to do to get my team home safely? And then when we did get home, it was like, oh my God, what on earth are we going to do?
I thought this was a cool photo at first.
And how on earth do I manage?
I think I need a zoom lens so I can zoom in on these bad boys. But
and then
I thought this was kind of a cool perspective.
That we weren't going to be able to go racing for a long while. And if you don't go racing, you don't get money. And at Williams, our two main revenue sources were sponsorship and prize fund money. And I knew within, quite a short time frame, having been on these massive conference calls with all the other team principals and the board of F1 and the FIA, that we weren't going racing for a good while. And at that point, the Williams board, and we had a board meeting and we knew it was game over.
What was that meeting like for you?
I don't remember it. I have absolutely no recollection of those conversations where I think we decided that was it. We would have to finally put the for sale sign up.
Oh, it's not even
I remember the aftermath of having to go through what was called a strategic review process, which is a real misnomer because it was a strategic review. It was a sale, and I was the one effectively selling the team. So I was the one having to. What it involved basically was people. We had obviously a advisor agency, and then my CFO and CEO and I would do the calls because we all had to do all this on Zoom. It wasn't like we had face-to-face meetings, which would have made life easier. But all of these like sale meetings, we had people that expressed interest, and then they were vetted, and then people that were deemed to be legitimate. We would then jump on what would normally be anywhere between a 2 and a 4 hour Zoom call where we would have to pitch Williams for sale. And being me, I was the one that was doing most of the talking and didn't feel good, I have to say.
Well, so you're on a Zoom call trying to sell a team, which is the last thing in the world that you want to do.
I don't want to do.
Yeah.
No. And the weirdest, I remember distinctly when we did go back racing in July, I was in, I don't know where we were, Hungary or something. And so I'd be at the track all day. And then these sales Zooms were scheduled for the evening. So I would come back, have to kind of do a rapid change, put on a business outfit.
Good enough for me.
And then sit at my laptop for another 3 hours, like at 10 o'clock at night, doing these sales calls, and just sat there going, what the hell is happening in my life?
And why had you ended up in this
position? So we went to this warehouse. That's where that road was going to. And when we pulled up, there was some crazy shit happening. Some girl was tied up.
Because you were
BDSM style to a pole. This guy was like anchoring her to the pole. Luckily, she was fully clothed, but
you were doing okay, and in a very short space of time.
Super random. And then we pulled into here, and to the right, there was like candles in a circle and people dressed up in cloaks, and they're saying prayers. It was
in the period before you had.
It was interesting, to say the least.
Yeah.
But there were a lot of things that were going wrong inside the team.
If we can use this for a thumbnail,
sugar daddies. If you don't have like a Red Bull drinks manufacturer or an engine partner or whoever bankrolling you. I mean, the Williams family weren't able to bankroll the team. Then you're in a catch-22 of just not being able to spend your way out of the problems, because you can't bring in new people. You can't make you know, a new front wing for every race, just in the hope that it might bring you a 10th here or, you know, a half a 10th there. So there were a lot of things that were going on behind the scenes, but again, I can't discuss them, unfortunately. But there were just a lot of things that all just conspired.
I wonder, although you weren't on social media, you would have been well aware of what people were saying, right?
Yeah.
I wonder how much of people's opinion of your leadership at this time was dominated by the fact that you were the daughter of the founder of the team and also a female.
I think a lot. I definitely think that probably influenced it.
Do you
But I also
notice this
think
bad boy?
there are a lot of people in this world that are just genuinely really unkind, and
I think this would be a good
like to
thumbnail. I
have
could
their
have like the
opinion, and
wording up here and
unfortunately, that's
here.
one of the pitfalls of social media, that it gives people a platform to talk in a really unpleasant, deeply unpleasant and hurtful way about people. And probably, you know, those people wouldn't walk down the street and say it to anybody's face, but you know, social media allows them to say it blindly. But it's not right, and it's not okay. And I'm really pleased that I was strong enough to keep myself off social media, because, you know, there were a couple of accidental times that I did look at it and I was horrified. And in actual fact, one of the reasons I broke my ankle last year was because I was out on a run and giving him like some welly, because the night before had looked at a story about me online. I don't know what it was. And then I stupidly, as I've trained myself not to do, went down to the comments, and there was some absolutely hateful stuff. And it was just, I'd just come off a really nice weekend break with Mark. You know, I was in a really happy place. You know, I'm not involved in a sport. I don't consider really myself in the public eye at all anymore. And people still have this vitriol towards me. And I was just heartbroken. I was in tears. It was like, how do people think that it's okay to say this stuff about people that they don't know? They've never walked a day in their shoes. They don't know what's going on in their world. You know, how would you like it if I came and said that kind of shit to you? It's unacceptable. And it really someone needs to get a hold on this, because it's really harmful, as we've seen in so many ways. I'm lucky I've got thick skin and I'm strong. But, you know, the next day I was like, well, I'm going for a run. Anyway, I went and ran, and I was thinking about these horrible people, and I fell over and broke my ankle. So, yeah, you know, it's not nice. Walking around, and, you know, in the paddock in particular, I did used to kind of almost walk around with my head down in those last few years, because I was embarrassed. I felt shame that people were looking at me going, she's crap, she's useless, or whatever. So it wasn't easy, but I've always been taught to hold my head up high, and I knew that I was trying to do the best job, and that's all you can do.
I mean, the constant theme coming out of this conversation around this period anyway is one of resilience. And, you know,
brother.
That's where the bailiffs were knocking on the door because your dad was struggling to run a racing team in the early days.
Yeah.
You were then also in a house where
the G80 was awesome. I love the wheel setup.
Trophies and
It sounded incredible too. All the carbon work, because under the hood was great. Like, oh, it was so pretty. Sad we didn't get a shoot more because we got kicked out in like 20 minutes, but
resilience and what
it was sick.
Formative years in the Williams household, both the highs and the lows, gave you that you lent on in this difficult time as the team principal.
My older brother and I, when we were like little, up until the age of 2 and 3, mum and dad really, Williams wiped them out, literally, like you just talked about. Bailiffs were at the door. My mum used to hide behind the sofa when the landlord used to come knocking, and like have the curtains drawn, and the whole premise on them moving into this ramshackle house with the landlords, where they would do it up because it had no curtains, carpets or anything. They lived in it for 2 years, no carpets or curtains. So I was brought up in such a shitty environment.
Thankfully, things got better.
Well, my husband's like, "Oh, give over, Williams." You know, we're talking about silver spoon.
Yeah,
it's just a joke. But you know, I've had an enormously privileged life. I have, and I'm very grateful for it, and I appreciate and recognise it every single day. But there were definitely times where, you know, the bailiffs at the door certainly didn't shape any kind of resilience because I was too little. Yeah. But there were definitely times that I think we all know that our childhoods form the foundations of of our grown-up years. And, you know, as much as my childhood was wonderful, my dad was
Goddamn, look
not
at that
around.
mess.
Not that
So
I
clean.
ever really thought too much about that. I'm not sure that I actually necessarily suffered because he wasn't there. But, you know, at the age of 9, he had a horrific car accident that basically took my mum away from us as a family because she was trying to keep him alive for a year. And that wasn't easy. And then obviously after my dad's accident, there was a huge amount of adjustment, but it was never talked about in our family. It was kind of like, well, this has happened to dad and we're just going to, you know, deal with it and carry on. And, you know, we were I look back now because I do a lot of work with the Spinal Injuries Association, and I know how people suffer after spinal cord injury. In so many ways, but the one way in which we were very lucky, which I appreciate enormously now, is that my dad, because of the success he'd had in the sport up until that point, we were so lucky in that my dad was able to come home, because so many people that suffer the same way, they don't. They have to live in rehab centres, or they don't have even if they get to live at home still, they don't have the level of care that my dad was actually able to afford. But saying that, you know, as a 9-year-old girl, to see your dad come home with a broken neck, you know, this once vibrant, energetic, incredible man who was actually, you know, he was a competitive runner. He was running half marathons competitively every weekend when it was not cool to run, you know, back in the mid-80s like it is today. And, you know, suddenly he was this
These noises taking forever, bro.
Who couldn't even feed himself.
Fun.
And that was a really hard knock.
I guess there's that much
children,
noise.
We weren't, you know, at that time, you know, you weren't offered therapy as a child if something happened to you. You just expected to get on with it. And then I was sent to boarding school. I really didn't like boarding school.
I just realized you guys might not even be able to hear the podcast I'm listening to.
Of it, I'm not very sociable, and it was all girls, and it wasn't great.
Might be for the best. I don't know if it would copyright it.
You know, and then I kind of went off the rails a bit. I didn't have the best relationship with my mother for a little while. And all of that, definitely.
Come on, Dino.
I'm a firm believer that resilience comes from experiences that you've gone through, particularly in childhood. And I think that a lot of those experiences just built up my resilience. My parents were tough. They were lovely parents, but they were tough. You know, when we were taken to races, it was, you are seen and not heard. And you are, you know, here, you know, you might be here as the boss's daughter, but you are going to be working in the kitchen and making teas and coffees for people and doing the washing up and making the boys' lunches. You know, that we were put to work and we were sent off to the merchandise stands, you know, to go and get lost for a few hours because, you know, there were busy and important people in the motorhome. So, and, you know, just, you know, I mentioned earlier that my dad once said to my mum, emotion is weak. You know, we weren't a family of huggers, put it like that. Yeah. And as much as we were very close as a family, there was not a lot of hugging and emotions and that kind of stuff. It's not us. And so I think my resilience was very much crafted in that period of my life. And I'm a bit of a loner. You know, I've always, in my 20s, I was, you know, kind of by myself quite a lot and just getting on with my career and my job. And, you know, that's where I think all your resilience comes from. It's just having some crappy experiences and knowing that the only way to get through it is to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and get on with it with a smile on your face.
So you're an optimist?
I am. I'm a massive, like, overly so. Normally I said earlier, didn't I, that something always comes along. Yeah. I am a massive optimist. And I genuinely believe that life is good and people are good. And I think when you have that attitude, you know, you always think good things are going to come around the corner. But
how valuable was that for you?
Invaluable.
Yeah.
I couldn't have done it otherwise. But, you know, there were a lot of other things in the mix as well that kind of kept me going. It wasn't just, you know, up here or what was in my heart. You know, I made sure that I was very conscious of what I needed internally and externally to get me through those times. I knew, like, for me, exercise and sleep and having great people around me and, you know, my husband and all that kind of thing was going to keep me safe in those times, and it was going to keep me buoyant and moving through those moments. And I was very conscious of that. And so I made sure I looked after myself in that sense. And, you know, looking after yourself physically and mentally, I think, can also provide a great platform to carry you through times of trouble.
Turn the place you live into the home you love with Bob's
What's
Discount
going on?
Furniture. When you shop at Bob's, you never have to sacrifice on style or settle for phony sales. You get the lowest price every day on family-proof sofas, beautiful bedrooms, delightful dining sets, lush mattresses, and trendy decor, with flexible financing options to fit your budget. So stop in and start to build your dream home at Bob's Discount Furniture,
Why is it
the
discolored
fastest
like
growing
that?
furniture store in the country.
So 2025 is well underway, and I bet a lot of you, like me, have already started to make plans on how this can be the very best year yet. And for me, making it a great year revolves around some investment. Some advice on how to deal with overwhelm when your brain just goes, as you said, I have no idea what to do here. How do you then make the next decision?
Breathe.
There we go.
So
Now you can maybe hear it in the background.
I started doing a bit of meditation and that kind of stuff in those last years. I had a moment where we were really good, I think, at Williams with health and wellness and well-being. It was something that we put in place probably from there, like the early days, like 14 and 15. We had a physio coach who came to look after the mechanics and the team at the race weekends, who then kind of did some stuff at the factory as well. And then we kind of beefed that up a bit. We had actually a qualified nurse on site who would look after anyone that had any issues, could go and see that lady. And I took myself to see her once because I was struggling mentally to cope with the overwhelm and
I'm
the
so
pressure.
confused by this.
And just having that first conversation just made it all better. And she said, you need a toolkit. You need to decide what needs to go in your toolkit to help you through these moments. Know that everyone's got your back. She said, but there'll be some things that you can really use. And it was from there that I kind of found things like meditation and calm apps and that kind of stuff where I could just take a moment for myself and to just breathe. I think we sometimes forget to breathe. And when we forget to breathe, our whole body can go into meltdown, shutdown mode. And so I did that. You know, I would do a bit of yoga. The running like really helped me. I think just getting out of your brain, doing anything to distract yourself, just were tools for me that really helped. But then again, I had brilliant people around me. I was so lucky in that I had a wonderfully supportive husband. My CEO, Mike, was just brilliant. And just having all these rocks around me that I knew that I could rely on, who I knew had my back. I knew my whole team had my back. And that gave me the most enormous amount of support. So I think it's about all of those things
That's really
that you can put in
driving
your
me
toolkit
insane, bro.
that you know work for you in those times of difficulty. Like even knowing that going and watching some absolute rubbish on TV, you know, my rubbish at the time was Towie. You know, I used to just go and watch Towie and go, there is another life out of here. And, you know, those people are as worried about their Botox as I am as about my Formula One team. And, you know, we're not saving the world here. Get some perspective. Yeah, it'll be all right tomorrow.
And have you ever, apart from that conversation with the nurse, had therapy?
I'm in therapy now.
What prompted your journey into therapy?
I really struggled leaving Williams. And I'm not ever embarrassed or shy to say that I need help. I think it's one of the most powerful things that you can ask for. Is to say I'm not okay, or I'm not good enough to do this. I need help. It's one of the first lessons I learned when I got to a senior position at Williams was the way to be a bad leader is thinking that you're better than everyone else because you're the boss. And you should surround yourself with really good people because they'll make you look even better. And also, nobody is infallible or perfect. We've all got weaknesses. And so you need to fill those weaknesses with people that, you know, are strong in those areas. And I think that's why Mike and I work so well because, you know, we were yin to each other's yang. You know, he was brilliant in some areas, but weaker in others and vice versa for me. And so we just complemented each other so brilliantly. But sorry, going back to the therapy, I was struggling when I left Williams. I had my dad, who was really ill. He came and lived in the house next door to us. We had COVID. I had a team of 11 nurses that I was having to look after my dad. I was with my dad every day. For that year and a half, you know, I was kind of his prime, I wouldn't say carer because I didn't do the nursing stuff, but, you know, he was my responsibility. And And as I said, I was really close to my dad. Like, I thought he was bulletproof. I never thought he'd die. And then he had quite a few moments during that year and a half where he got, he was hospital admissions repeatedly. COVID was around. I mean, he actually got COVID and he survived it. So I really did think he was bulletproof considering. And then he got really ill. He was taken into hospital and he passed away within 48 hours. And then I think because I'm a delay tactician, when my mum died, I took over Williams, I buried my head in the sand.
Yeah.
When Williams was sold, I buried my head in the sand and looked after my dad with all my ferocious might. And then when my dad died, it was like, there's nothing left. I'm going to get really upset. They're gone.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's hard when your whole life changes, it's hard. So, my poor husband can't bear the brunt of, me being miserable or angry or bitter or whatever it is. With all the emotions that I was trying to deal with. So
what was the quote that your parents used about emotion?
Emotion is weak.
Emotion is weak.
It was my father to my mother.
Your dad. So
yeah.
Often when you live in and grow up in a household, and we've had conversations not dissimilar to this with many people, including the British Prime Minister, saying that he didn't say what he wished he'd said at the very end because they lived in a different time.
Yeah.
I wonder whether you were able to bridge that gap of not showing emotion and saying to your dad what you wanted to say.
Yeah, definitely. And I had a very different relationship with my dad in that last year and a half. It was a proper amazing, like non-work related, because that was really all we, that we had before. Not all that we had, but we didn't have Williams taking or diluting the family side of our relationship in that last year and a half. So, I've never been on a family holiday with Dad. That was never going to happen. But, we went on family days out. We took him to the Brooklands Museum and we took him to the zoo. He'd never been to the zoo his whole life. And, I got to take him to the zoo with my little boy. I got to take him to Brooklands with my little boy. And, we went to Savile Gardens at Virginia Water. And my dad, if I couldn't make it for whatever reason, on the odd occasion, went and collected Nate from play school. Grandpa in the van would go and pick Nate up. And he came to Nate's little play. I mean, just a whole different world with my dad. I got to enjoy an experience for a year and a half of him being just the best dad and grandpa. I used to take Nate to after play school, and I picked him up every day. We'd go to Grandpa's, and Nate would pretty much every day have his supper at Grandpa's on Grandpa's bed because he was bedbound at that time, and they'd watch Peppa Pig together. And my dad loved, as it turns out, Peppa Pig. I mean, who doesn't love Peppa Pig? But I've got a brilliant photo of them watching, like completely transfixed at the TV, and it was magic. So, I definitely am very different to my parents. I can, as you've seen, I can be very emotional, and I think I took that into the team as well. And I kind of transformed the culture in the team off the back of the fact that I had a bit more.
I like that
about me.
Looks good to me.
And look, it's obviously still painful that you lost Williams under your watch, right? But that year and a half you had with your dad would never have happened had you still been the team principal of Williams. And
don't get me wrong, I am not sat here going, oh my God, poor me. I sit here and I go, I actually now 5 years later, because I can't believe it's been 5 years, I pinch myself and I can't believe that was my life. How lucky am I that I got to grow up in that world? I got to call myself Frank Williams's daughter and be the daughter of someone that won that many world championships and create this iconic team that so many people love. And to top it all, I got to run it. But also now I now have an opportunity to live a really different life. Not many people get to say that. And I'm so lucky. And I have a brilliant husband and I have a brilliant little boy, 2 brilliant stepdaughters, and, we're the Waltons.
Before we move on, just sticking with the conversation about therapy, because it's a recurring theme on High Performance. I believe we lived in a world where we used to think that people who were struggling in some way with their mental health were weak. But actually, I think we're coming around to an understanding that the most powerful people of all are those who can struggle and keep on moving forwards, right? So what was the moment that you decided that you would go to therapy, and what has it done for you?
I can't remember the actual moment, but I think I've been seeing my lady now for a year and a half. But this is my last block, actually.
Right.
We're going to see how I do, because I feel I'm in a really good place. I thought you'd go into it and they would sit there and they'd kind of go, oh, they're there, or, you know, you're amazing, you know, the world is great, don't worry about it. But they don't. You just talk. And I never realized, and like the first bit I did of it, I was like, well, I'm not sure this is
pinky,
helping.
isn't it?
But then suddenly something flicks, and it's incredible how powerful it can be. But I think that's obviously when it's guided with a trained therapist, and if you connect with your therapist like I have with mine, it can be really powerful and valuable, and it's going to, you know, it's transformed me and brought me back to a kind of even keel. And I'm very lucky with that. But I think having anyone to talk to when you're struggling can be so useful and valuable to anybody. It's to talk. You know, that old adage, a problem shared is a problem halved. You know,
Why does that look
there's a
off?
load of truth in it. You know, find someone to talk to if you're struggling. You know, don't hold it in. You know, just. I read something the other day that I'm so into all this stuff now. Like, I love the Mel Robbinses of this world, and I'm reading her Let Them book at the moment.
So is Harriet. She's well
really?
into it. Yeah.
Oh my God, I wish that she had written that book when I was in Formula One, because if I'd have had that philosophy of let them, let me, and not worried about everybody else or what people thought of me, or trying to control everybody else and what they were thinking. Even now, like, I worry about all that stuff, but who cares? Can't control what everybody else thinks of you, can you? But yeah, just going back to the talking thing, all of that stuff, like, if you hold it in, if you don't make changes, how are you going to, you know, expect things to be any different if you don't take action? I'm following Spencer Matthews,
Right.
like, you know, like when he did that amazing desert marathon thing, like all that kind of stuff, I get a bit obsessed by. I just find human endeavour and what people are able to achieve extraordinary. Spencer Matthews wrote this thing about giving up alcohol. The best things that he's done in the past however long thing was alcohol. And I gave that up. I thought in Christmas, I was like, I don't want to drink anymore, not interested. And that's really unusual for me. And a couple of years ago, I did the same with meat. So I just don't want to eat meat anymore. So I became vegetarian. I've never looked back, and had the same feeling about alcohol. So I thought, well, I've had this before. I'm not going to go crazy. I'll just try dry January, thinking I would last like a week. Never even entered my head to have a drink the whole way through January. And what is it now? End of February. And it's the same. I tell you, I wish that I'd never, ever had a glass of anything in my whole life, because not having alcohol in your system, I don't want to sit here like a weird evangelist, but honestly, and now the research that I've done on it, it's like, wow, what alcohol does to your system is terrifying and can even change the way that you think. My life in the past 2 months has been completely different. The transformation in my thinking and emotions, and even how I think about Williams, completely different.
You know, lots of the conversations that I've heard, you've spoken about what's happened at Williams, but you haven't really revealed this newfound freedom that I'm getting a sense of, and this kind of clarity of thought about how the future looks. And I wonder whether actually, for the first time in a few years, you are actually really excited about the future and you are looking forwards more and backwards less.
Yes, I'm definitely looking forwards more. And one of the things that I loved about Formula One is the variety. No one day was the same for me. And now that I've kind of really stepped into kind of revving up my career a little bit, it's like, what can I do? And the great thing about life for me now is that so many different things come across my desk that I can get involved in or I can't. I need to work. I want to work. My brain and just in my DNA, I'm a worker. I like working. So, you know, that was never not an option for me. I took a couple of years when my dad was still alive. I did a few little bits, but I wanted to focus on him and my family for a couple of years and really just decompress after leaving Formula One.
Get rid of that.
But now I'm like, right, what can I do? Let's go. I love it because I never know what's going to come. Like you messaging me, it was like, brilliant. Yeah, next Thursday, I'm going on Jake's podcast. Amazing. And that's so cool to do all these different things. And I get to say I've got a portfolio career now because, you know, I'm nearly 50, but that makes me sound like, you know, quite a cool 25-year-old.
Yeah. I love this conversation. We had a guy on called Robin Sharma. You had a Robin Sharma, he wrote a book called The 5 a.m. Club. He's an amazing guy. And he spoke about the fact that when we don't do something that we used to love doing, all we see is the thing that we're not doing. So it's not dissimilar for me. I've stopped doing TV in the way I used to. You know, I'm not, for the first time since I was 18, I haven't put an earpiece on and done live telly every single week. And for a long time after I stopped doing the football, I really, all I focused on was what I wasn't doing, not what I was doing.
Yeah.
And then Roman came on and he said, you know that nothing comes for free. So if you were still doing the football, all the experiences you've had for the last 2 or 3 years, you would never have had. And if you were still running Williams, if you were still the team principal there, all of the moments of awakening you've had since 2020, you wouldn't have them.
Exactly.
It's not about what you've lost, is it?
No. I think there's time to focus on what you've lost because there's always a grieving. Like you did what you did for a long time and you must have missed it enormously because you miss what you do, you miss what it gives you, and you miss the people.
Yeah.
And you need time as a human. We all need time to transition out of big things that we do in our life. But it's about then the ability to pivot your brain, I suppose, and to go
see how bad it looks.
Life is about so many different experiences. There is so much more than just pigeonholing yourself in one place, right? There's so much to learn. Yeah. I'm a big learner. I love learning and I love reading. And like podcasts, I've just found podcasts, which is nuts because I know that like people have been listening to podcasts for years and years and years now, but I'm new to this. So every morning I listen to a podcast. I do like lots of like meditation and calming and all that kind of stuff. And your life is about embracing it and seeing what you can learn and find what's new in it to bring you joy each and every day. And I'm lucky I have the time and the space to be able to do that. But equally for me,
oh brother,
if I was still running that team, the most important thing that I value and appreciate now is if I would have missed out on the wonderful, joyous moments that my child has brought me.
Yeah.
And even when he comes home with a picture of himself sat in a McLaren car because he went on a school trip to Brooklands this week, still brings me joy. Yeah. The first Lego car that he made was a McLaren. I mean, I like Zach, but I'm not sure Grandpa would be very happy about this.
But also, you're able to lean into real life.
Yeah.
And in Formula One, you can be tricked into thinking that it's real life.
Yeah, exactly. And it, it is real life when you're in it, and it's so important. But there are so many other things. And don't get me wrong. Probably if someone waved a magic wand and said you can have your team back, I would struggle to say no. For a variety of reasons. But equally, I might struggle to give up what I've forged and created and quite honestly worked hard for right now to get to the point that I am at in my life. And Nate's quite a mommy's boy. I don't think he'd be happy about it. Mark certainly wouldn't be.
And I think the joy that you're going to be able to bring to people is that you've got so much experience of a world that people know so little about. And your job now can be bringing those experiences into the world for people who listen and watch podcasts like this to understand. So I'd love to talk about a few of the things that you experienced in your time and the lessons you took from them. Toto Wolff.
Yeah.
What did you learn from Toto?
Oh, wow. Toto...
Come on, do you know his
Toto came into Formula One via Williams. He bought a shareholding from my dad. And it was only because Toto was called by Mercedes to go and run Mercedes. It was kind of his brainchild that I would run Williams. So I have an enormous amount to be grateful.
You need to tell us the story because it's a great story.
Oh, the story that, when I was called when I was about to move house, it was just before Christmas. I'd taken the day off and I got a call from Toto the night before saying, Bernie wants to see us in London tomorrow.
So at this point, he's a shareholdder in the team, Toto?
And like executive director. Yeah. I was kind of side by side with him, but, and I'm like, but Toto, I'm moving house tomorrow, dude. I can't, this is not fair. It's the 22nd of December. I've given it my all this year. This is my one day to move house. Been in the diary. Everyone's known about it. I said, but I think he's got a big sponsor for us. You need to come. We can't say no to Bernie. So I'm like, clearly we can't say no to Bernie. And so I'm like, all right, I'll be there. And so drop all the packing and all the rest of it. And I go up to London and go to Princess Gate, which is where Bernie's offices were. I'm put in his office, and I think Bernie, his secretary just says, Bernie will come see you in a minute. So Bernie comes in, says, hi, how are you doing? And I'm just finishing up a meeting. I won't be long. Are you happy just to sit here? So I'm like, fine, no problem. So I sit there and I'm like, Toto said 12 o'clock or something, he'd meet me there. And at this point, it's 12:15. So I phone him and I can't remember the exact order, but he makes up some rubbish about the fact that he's stuck in traffic. Yeah. And then, another 20 minutes, I'm still sat in here in the room by myself going, well, what the hell? I should be moving house. And where is Toto? And then I phone him up and he's, I'll be there in 5 minutes. I would love to do his Terminator type voice, but I can't. And so I'm like, this is just unacceptable. I've been waiting 45 minutes now. And I got stuff to do. And then I get a text from him going, Claire, please don't be cross with me. I'm really sorry. So I'm like, well, that's really weird. What's going on? And then a few minutes later, both Toto and Bernie kind of walk in the room together looking really secretive and a bit dodgy. And I'm like, this is weird. And I sit down and Bernie sits at his desk and Toto and I are on either side. And Bernie said, how do you feel about running a Formula One team? I was like, I'm sorry, what? And then Toto kind of explains the situation about he's been approached by Mercedes and they think it would be a really great idea if perhaps I took over running the team. So as you can imagine, I'm sat there and at the time I was director of marketing and comms. I had a seat on the board. Yeah, I did have a seat on the board. But I'm minding my own business. And I've always been told my whole life I am never running this team. It was never in the plan. And my dad is not in the room. And does my father even know about this? And that question was kind of ignored. And we ended up having this whole 10, 15-minute conversation about whether I'm ready to run a team. And I was really like poleaxed. It's like, I was not expecting this. And really, why are you asking? I don't really understand. And, is this actually a job offer? Or are we just having a,
look at it.
See the lay of the land here?
Oh, Lord.
Anyway, so I was like, well, I'm not sure. And so obviously I was presenting quite a dubious response. And so they wheeled someone else in who they went, well, if you don't want to do it, he'll do it.
Honestly.
It's like, what the hell is going on here?
Wow.
And then Bernie looked at his watch and said, I'm late. It's one of my daughter's birthdays and I've got to go for lunch and you guys can come. So we went for lunch and then I went home and my boyfriend at the time and opened the door and I obviously looked quite shaken and I said, I think I've just been asked to run the team. And then I spent obviously Christmas talking through with a load of people and then plans kind of fell into place from there.
What did you say to the team on the very first day when it was Claire in charge?
I still got the little bit of paper that I wrote my notes on. I've never been that would be those moments when I had to stand it up in front of the team and we did regular we call them town halls where we got all the staff together. I mean, I would be in the bathroom in worlds of pain before that. That was the only time when I used to get really nervous was when I had to stand up in front of the team. And I distinctly remember what I was wearing. I remember the conversation I had with my best friend before I went in front of everybody. I remember the words on my bit of paper. They were really short. I just said something along the lines of, this is my team and I love it and I will give it my all. And it's not in great shape now, but I believe that we can get back to where we all want to see it. But right now, nobody should be wasting their time in here. Everybody needs to be working. So let's get back to work, guys, and let's have a great next year.
The other area that I would like to talk about is female representation in Formula One.
I don't know, man. I suck at taking
sometimes I
pictures.
think people love to say, oh, things have definitely improved. Well, I, in 2013, saw a female team principal in the sport. I don't see one today.
No.
Let's be really honest about this. Are things getting better despite all the efforts of certain people?
So obviously I'm not at the coalface anymore, so I can't tell you the numbers. I know that when I was at Williams and we did an enormous amount of proactive work to try and change this landscape, it had a really positive effect. So, for example, when I took over the team, 9% of our workforce were women. When I left, 19% were women. And that was only done because we did a lot of positive work to change things in this area. And at that time, during those last few years, Formula One was definitely recognising that it needed to do a whole lot more. So obviously at Williams, we gave Susie Wolff her first opportunity in a Formula One car. We then brought Jamie Chadwick into the team in our driver academy. So supported these two women that have now gone on to do incredible things to try and drive change, but in the cockpit. So obviously Susie's doing her great thing in the F1 Academy. Yeah. Jamie is, trailblazing in the States and has done over here as well. And I think from a driver representation perspective, the work that's being done is fantastic.
Bad boy.
But I've always said I'd like to see, the next female team principal come into sport. I left 5 years ago.
This is such a tough
And for the last 5 years of my time, I was the only female team principal. And when you look at even the level below that, at C-suite level, how many of those C-suite execs are female in the teams? I'm not knowledgeable enough. I'm not close enough now to know if there are any. I know there are a handful, but I don't know the ratio of men to women. And what I do know is that, on the screens, we don't see a whole lot of women working behind the scenes in, the other kind of roles. So the aero roles, the engineering roles, pit crew, we see a few, but I can tell you there are a lot more women behind the scenes working in the sport than you would see on the telly. Yeah. So I think times are definitely changing. What I would always say, and when I go out and do a lot of my speaking stuff to young women that are looking at the sport, that it's a very welcoming sport for women. The sport is on the whole a meritocracy. You're there because you're good at your job. Teams want to employ good people. They don't actually care whether you're male or female. So the space is wide open. If you're a woman and you're, great at what you do, go and work in Formula One because it will always welcome you. But I think, things need to change. All industries have got this issue. It's not just Formula One. But at least Formula One are putting the groundwork in now. But I do think more can always be done. I think, there are plenty of more than capable women out there running teams. Why aren't they being given those jobs?
I think that you're underappreciated and underrated as the team principal. I think that there are very, very few people that have had 15 podiums in the last few years that are leading Formula One teams. Maybe Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. Who else has had that number of podiums?
So I think when I was in the sport, certainly, and I didn't work this out till I left, because obviously I had all my success at the beginning, and so it probably everybody remembers me for those awful years. But the first 4 years were, I took the team to 2 third positions in the championship, 2 fifths. That's pretty reasonable for an independent Formula One team run by a woman who was, the boss's daughter. And those first few years, like you say, I got 15 podiums, which was, I looked it up, which was the highest number of any team principal for that decade outside of Christian and Toto. I'm quite proud of that. I'd like to remember that rather than
you should remember
any
that.
of the other stuff.
And so should everybody else. And I just wonder whether if you weren't a woman, whether people would remember that more.
I'm not going to comment on that. I'll leave you to just leave that hanging in the air.
Why? I'm interested in your opinion, though.
I don't know, because, I could sit here and I go, yeah, I think I had a harder ride because I was a woman. But then I'll say that and then I'll be annihilated because, if you say that, well, they'll go, well, you were just rubbish.
Yeah.
So you can't win. It's for, I think, other people to judge. It's for history to judge. It's for my record to judge. I took the team to those championship positions that Williams hadn't enjoyed for nearly a decade. And I sold the team as a going concern with the lights all still left on and with every employee in post. And I'm proud of that.
And you see the irony as well of fearing the fact that if you say, I had a harder ride than everyone else, everyone will criticise me for being a woman. But the reason why you had a harder ride was because you're a woman. And the reason why it's easier to criticise you is because you're a woman.
Yeah. But if I think all I would say to the critics is that I don't care. Have your opinion, because surely that will just tick them right off, because I don't care, because I know my truth. And I think that's really important for anyone, is everyone can have an opinion. You can't control it. Let them, in the words of Mel Robbins, right?
There you go.
Let them think what they want, judge how they want, but I know my truth.
I reckon 5 years ago you would have struggled to say that and believe it, but I think you say that now and you probably do believe it.
Yeah, I'm getting there. I am getting there. But I don't want I'm not arrogant. I don't want anyone to listen and go, wow, she's arrogant, because I'm not. It takes an awful lot for me to even sit here and hear you talk about the 15 podiums. I don't sit here and go, yeah, I smashed it. You know, I'm quite embarrassed. I would sit here and go, well, you can say that. I would never. When I go and do my public speaking now, I do actually make mention of that. But I get embarrassed that I make mention of it. I don't like shouting about it, which is wrong, isn't it? I'm really happy to sit there and talk about all my failings and my mistakes and how bad the last few years were, and all of that, which is weird mindset, isn't it? It's easier sometimes to talk about your failures as a human, I think, than sometimes your successes, because we're just not programmed to boast about what we do well, and maybe we should. But do you know what the worst thing is? That I actually remember towards the end of 2015, sometimes the podium, this is going to sound awful, but I'll be honest about it. Sometimes the podium, so quite a long walk from your garage, and you'd go down there and everyone would stop you, and then you'd have to go down and it would be a scrum. And I'm quite small, I'm quite short. I'd get down there, I could never see the blinking podium anyway. So towards the end, I'd be like, oh crap, have I got to go down there again? Because you can't be seen not to go down there. And then I'd be like, and then when the podium stopped coming, I was like, more fool you idiot, Williams, you should never have bemoaned. But I actually genuinely thought coming off the back of the 2015 season, we were going to be fighting for race wins in 2016. I thought we would just be going on an upward trajectory, not a downward one.
And how has that helped you now that you didn't necessarily appreciate what you had?
It's taught me the biggest lesson is, like, so many things in Formula One have taught me so many invaluable lessons that I carry forward to this day. But that one in particular, for a number of reasons. So appreciate the success when you have it. Appreciate a good thing when you know you've got it. I did take for granted that Williams would always be there. I genuinely thought that Williams would, I would hand it over to my son or to my niece or whoever. I was guarding it for the next generation. I thought it would stay in our family for as long as we wanted it to, if that was what we chose. And then, in the blink of an eye, it's gone. So learning that lesson of appreciating and valuing what you have, not that I ever took it for granted, but enjoying every moment, I suppose, is a lesson that I've learned. Yeah.
And also learning not to mourn stuff that never was in the first place. It's easy to mourn the fact that you aren't able to leave that Formula One team to your child.
Yeah.
Would he have wanted it? Like,
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? There's a whole million other things going on there. And
yeah. When he came home from Brooklands, he looked quite sheepish, and I was talking to him about what he saw as one of Grandpa's cars. Then, I mean, he doesn't know what a Grandpa's old cars looks like quite yet, but he was like, "Yeah, Mummy, I did like the cars." And I said, "Well, did you see the planes?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw the planes." His little eyes lit up, and I said, "What's wrong? Why are you looking so sad?" And he said, "I don't want to tell you, Mummy." I said, "Why? Tell me." And he said, "Well, it might make you cross or it might make you really sad, and I don't want to upset you." He's 7. And I said, "Just tell me. You can tell me anything." And he said, "I much preferred the planes than the cars, and I thought that would upset you." And it's like, Nate, you can love what you want. And do you know what? Your grandpa and your his great-grandpa fought in the war and was one of the few guys that came home in the Wellington Bombers that are at Brooklands now. I said, you saw what your great-grandpa did, but you saw what your grandpa did. You choose your own path in life.
Before we finish, I've got some quick-fire questions for you if you're happy with this.
I love a quick-fire. Go on. Are they good ones? Are they like, do you like carrot cake or chocolate cake?
Yeah, that's exactly the level we're at. Is that okay?
That's not the podcast to be on.
First of all, the 3 non-negotiable behaviours that you think are most important in life.
Oh, kindness, courtesy, manners.
What's the biggest leadership lesson you learned in your time in Formula One that you'd love to pass on to people?
Don't ask anyone to do anything you wouldn't be prepared to do yourself.
The 3 best drivers you worked with in your time in F1.
That I worked with, not that I had the privilege of. George Russell.
Yeah. Why?
He was just he's a dream, George. He's almost a bit like Nigel Mansell, not quite your typical racing driver if you met him on the street. So charming, so English gent. I don't know, he's just lovely. Yeah. I love George. George, Valtteri Bottas. I mean, I don't know what's going on with his mullet. I mean, and some of the videos, it was bonkers. That's not the Valtteri that I knew. But I look at the Valtteri that I did know and I go, wow, was that dude hiding in the dude that I knew? Because like can't compute the two. I think it's brilliant. Valtteri's whole thing now is just mega. I love it. But when he worked for me, he was a very different, very buttoned up, you know, very, regimented Finn, I suppose. Just, I loved him. Felipe Massa, he was wonderful. I was so, I brought him in. He was my driver pick. We had Valtteri, when I took over the team, and I thought he was great. But then I got kind of my pick. It was my first driver choice. And it was like, Felipe was running alongside Michael Schumacher at that point, almost winning championships. And I got to bring him to Williams and negotiate, you know, crazy driver deal. And it was just a joy. Fun. And he was lovely.
Yeah. Your biggest strength and your greatest weakness?
My biggest weakness was probably I don't know if bullshit is the right word, but I wish I was a bit more like...
a few more photos. I think we're going to finish this set and then we'll do another live stream maybe a little bit later of the NSX.
Intelligence that
this one's taking a lot longer than I thought it would.
Looked after and treated my team.
So, few photos.
From every respect. But I think that sometimes was also my biggest weakness, because maybe I was sometimes too close. I was sometimes too conscious of what we were asking them to do and worried. And when sometimes I just needed to say, get the job done, you know?
The job done.
The biggest mistake that you made that you wish you could not make again?
I wonder whether there would have been any way to... I saw Gunther Steiner the other day. This isn't a quick fire, but I saw Gunther the other day and he said, you idiot, why don't you just hold on? Because obviously look at the sport now. If I'd have just managed, and I look at this, I think about this every day. If I was just able to cling on for a little bit longer, we would have survived. Because obviously look what the sport has turned into. And Gunther said, you know, what an idiot. And I said, but Gunther, we didn't have any road left. We were at the end. But I do look and I just think, could I have gone and, even if I'd have gone and got some private equity at a ridiculous rate, you know, if there was even a private equity to keep us going and giving away 40%, it would have seen us through. Or the 60%, we would have lost the majority in controlling shareholding, but we would still been in Formula One and enjoying the sport, and still only 40%.
Oh my God, do you know he's hurt?
You know, that it's much bigger than now. But
hindsight's an exact science.
There you go.
And what did you say at the beginning? We agreed.
I think
yes,
best you
can.
Sorry, I've not done well in my therapy.
The best you can where you are with what you've got.
Yes.
You didn't.
Exactly.
The best you could do was save the team.
Yeah.
Where you were was a team with no road. What you had was no understanding of the fact that Formula One was about to explode, right?
No, exactly. I mean, it could have gone completely the other way, right? If, you know, Drive to Survive hadn't taken off. Or
let's imagine that you don't know that Formula One's done what it's done. And I take you back to that day when you decided to sell the team.
Yeah.
Would you sell the team? Or would you go down the private equity route and risk the entire future of everyone there, not knowing anything you know now?
That's what I did, because there was no way. And we had those conversations as well. And it just wasn't a feasible option for us.
So maybe try being a bit kinder to yourself.
Okay. I will write that down, and I will try this week to be a bit kinder to myself. I'll write it on my post-it note on the mirror.
But I think in many ways, that's where we finish with that, because I think that your story is remarkable. It is absolutely, without question, unique. You went through the most difficult personal traumas, the most difficult business traumas, and added onto all of that, you had the responsibility that this was a family business, and you had this kind of dream in your head.
I don't know. I hate that pull on the left.
Onto the next generation. Right, you've had to cope with
definitely wasn't ideal shooting conditions.
Which
That's
is
for
why
sure.
you forget.
Didn't get to choose where the cars went.
Principle. That you
had 4 cars you had to shoot.
You made incredibly brilliant decisions, that you hired
tough.
wonderful drivers, that the Williams name is still in Formula One, and without the decisions you made, there's a very strong chance.
And I left my CPL on, which I didn't even realize.
So go and be proud of what you did, and all of those lessons, the good and the bad, go and share them with the world.
But you live and you
don't forget
learn.
about the good. There's a lot of them.
Okay, thank you. All right, I feel I've been told off.
Please don't. It's been so nice to see you again.
It's been so nice to see you too, Jake.
Can I ask you one last question?
Go on.
How would you like to leave people thinking about high performance? Your golden rule, if you like, for our audience to live a high performance life?
I think focus. You know, focus. You've got to be 100. If you want to achieve something amazing, you gotta make sacrifices. You got to focus on it 100%, and you got to work hard. Success only comes from brutal struggle, but it's so worth it when you get there.
And you got there. Never forget that. Thank you. I don't think you can be high performance by yourself. I don't think it exists.
Maybe I don't know, man.
The battle between McLaren's Zach Brown and Red Bull continues, and this time it's about more than just racing. It's about
Let's see. You're looking really good. Take that, nerd. Focus? No. Fuck me, mate. Not even in focus. That's not in focus. That might be. But it has that in the way. Kill myself. Oh Lord. What's cooking good looking? Just added another turd to it. Took one turd away and added. This guy stinks. The noise. Shit. You have all the chances in the world, bud. Do 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 do. Do. Do do. That's not in focus. Might be in focus. I think. Dang, giving me hearts. Making my pee-pee go boing. I don't know how I feel about all. Fuck 'em. Still feels out of focus, not gonna lie. Look, the front's in focus. I don't know what's happening. Push the blacks. Next subject. Sheesh, more hearts, sheesh. My nostrils. If there's any good music on here. Genre. What do you have? We gon' always win. A little loud there, bud.
Holla, why do they doubt the kid? I'm about to prove them all wrong again. I got a low tolerance, cause they don't even know what the problem is. It's me. You waiting on the boy to fail, then hold your breath and face your death. Cause you play a roulette with each step I progress, no less. Go ahead and place your bets, cause we know where we at. Yeah, we know we top tier, cause all the hate that you bring, we know it stops here. I'm taking off like a rocket here and stopping here. It's strange how they cannot see the future.
A good song, but I need to turn it down.
But see profit here, wait up. We gon' always win. Promise that that's not a promise, yeah, that is a threat. You know that I promise to bring the team commas. When the whole team win, that's when you flex. Win, and I'ma do it again. Watch me win, then watch me do it again. Tell them I can't take no loss. My team hold no L's, no. Aiming for the top, can't make it by myself. I ain't taking no loss. I ain't taking no loss. Look, I'ma always win. I ain't taking no loss. Look, I'ma always win. We already know that we the coldest. Watch me heat it up, let me focus. I'm going toe to toe with foes. I know they notice. I kick in doors, they they only hope for closing. Why? Cause they know I go again and go again. And when they in a drought, I'm the one that can make it flow again. Talk to me nice, my team, they ready to go again. Running into us, we'll gladly send you home again. Whoa, we don't talk, better know the grind, gon' match my walk. I'm a cheat code, I don't take no loss. Making no sense, run up the scope, cause all I do is win.
I knew we should have stopped back there.
Let's go!
A little time, and he was going to get there.
Yeah.
So we were both saying. We were both
Yeah,
saying
my bad.
We
Super
are
loud.
both so vindicated at the poise and killer instinct and dog that is inside Lando Norris. We've known it the whole time.
We've known it the whole time. We've known it the whole time.
What you got to say for yourself, bro? What you got to say for yourself right now? Put some respect on my boy Lando Norris's name.
I got to say that I was right. That I was right. That I just you know, he was young and he needed. That was the year that he learned. That was the learning year that the McLaren learned.
Right.
No. To be honest, I had been saying, like, I need to see him win a hard one.
Yeah.
I need to see him win one. Like, that was all I was saying the whole year. I was like, he's just winning. Like, he didn't win a. We talked about when the ball goes on the ground, he dives in. He's got to recover the fumble.
Yeah.
He's got to win a tough one. Let me see him win. He didn't win one tough one last year.
Well, guess what, baby?
That was a tough one. He won the toughest.
He won a tough one.
He won a tough one. That was a tough.
That was
a tough one.
That was, as Logan Roy would say, a fight for a knife in the mud, and Lando Norris came out with that knife, and he won that race.
God damn it, I hate this photo.
Even I was shocked. As a Lando stan, going into this race, it was like, Max coming in. Well, Max is in third, and it's going to rain. I was like, oh, well, Lando was on pole, and Max was in 17th in Brazil last year. What chance does Lando have if Max is only 2 places behind him?
I was predicting, like, him and Oscar were going to go at each other, and then Max was going to go, wee!
Yeah.
But that was what I was predicting was going to happen. I'm wondering if that was a discussion that they had. That's a tough thing to choreograph. Like,
right.
Don't take each other out and then let Max through. That's what we don't want. But
right.
Because that was a weird thing that was going on in the middle of the race where they were like, hold your fire, Oscar.
Yeah.
God damn it.
And then, like, 4 laps later, they were like, actually, go ahead. That was the one weird part, because McLaren seemed to have executed a flawless race strategy. Like, they were on it. They brought him in it, like, the perfect time, because you saw the people that executed a perfect race strategy came out ahead. And then the people that fucked up, and that included Stake, by the way.
Yeah.
Like Hulkenberg, where did he finish? Like 7th? 6th?
Yeah.
How many? Like, it would have taken hundreds of races to get the amount of points that Hulkenberg got in that one race.
Right.
I think Williams did the right plan with Albon. I mean, so that was like a big decision that you had to make, and it's even harder to make that decision when you're in first. So, like, let's think about that. You know, when you're ahead, you're the first person past the pit box. You got to make that fucking call. They made the right call. Ferrari made the wrong call. And more importantly, the lead story, I don't know why we started with Lando winning. The lead story is Yuki Tsunoda's V-car made the wrong call and cost Tsunoda P5, P6.
Yep.
Crazy. That's the headline story.
Totally,
fucking Yuki Tsunoda was right fucking there.
Yuki Tsunoda's revenge tour was cut off at the knees, dude. Cut off at the knees. Listen, we've got a lot to go over in this episode. We're going to be covering it all. We're going to be covering the rookies. Tough day for the rookies. Qualifying, Yuki's obviously incredible quali lap. Ferrari, what the hell is going on with Lewis and the country of Italy? And Alex Albon looking pretty good right now. My prediction looking pretty sexy. We got all that and more coming to this
prediction.
Coming to you this episode. Where should we begin? Should we start with Yuki? Let's chat about our son Yuki Tsunoda.
I mean, incredible performance.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I want to start with, if we're going to talk about quali, the first thing that I noticed about quali, only real important thing about quali that I really noticed was during when I saw the intro poses for the first time.
It's just the front end's too washed out, and I can't save it while saving the darkness.
I feel fed.
I fucking screamed louder than I did during any part of any of the sporting event.
Yeah.
And my girlfriend turns to me. She goes, "What?" I said, "George did the pose," and I showed it to her, and she's like, "What is that?" I go, "He did that. It's his thing." She's like, "Well, if it's his thing, then why are you shocked that he did it?" I was like, "Because he doesn't really own it, and now he's owning it."
Yeah, he said he was going to retire. He said he was going to retire the pose, and then all of a sudden he's doing the pose. And last year when he did the pose, it was just like him standing there doing the pose. This one, he's walking towards you. He's floating at you,
like a swan about to fucking take off,
like Jesus walking on water, dude. I mean, he was. And honestly, dude, he walked his way into that podium because, the cool down room. It was like, oh, and George is here too. How many podiums is George? How many cool down rooms?
I was like,
George not supposed to be in that he's in? He's always like, oh, and it's me and me and me and your friend Steve. Steve.
He's always the third. He's always third wheeling a podium.
Totally. I mean, Max and Lando for sure deserve to be on that podium. Yeah. The other person who should have been on that podium was Oscar Piastri, but he was, having Lando Russia 2020 flashbacks, 2021 flashbacks.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But no, so
he's George is literally like the raccoon, like looming by the trash, hoping to get them. Like, he even said it when he was interviewed. He was like, "Oh, I was just there, hoping to pick up the pieces.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, but I am on the podium, so that's cool."
Right.
You have to like get at him with a broom. Get out! It's not your podium. Get.
You got to start putting like spikes on the edge of your trash so it's uncomfortable for him to sit on it.
And by the way, raccoons incredibly smart. I was on a camping trip once. I once saw one because they have thumbs and shit. They're smart.
Yeah. Right.
I once saw one get on its hind legs and pick up a backpack, one of my friend's backpack, and just walk off with it, holding it like a human. It was surreal.
That's a George Russell move right there.
Yeah, that's a George Russell move. It evolved.
George is wily. George is wily.
Yes.
But raccoons, they're also, they're not the fastest animals in the wild. They're not the quickest animals in the wild, but they
get by their wits.
And that's George Russell.
That's George Russell.
That's
for sure George Russell. And I want to say that the biggest takeaway, so obviously Yuki Tsunoda incredible performance, obviously.
Yes.
Ice lattes, baby. Ice lattes. Of course.
Ice lattes, baby. Ice lattes. Boom, 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 boom.
But obviously the race cast a pall a little bit over everything, but not his fault, obviously. But he had a lot of equanimity about it. He's trying to like do a page turn on that. But
right.
Can we talk about the other thing that came out of quali? Haas fucking sucks, dude.
Yes, dude. Haas
suck. They fucking suck. And I fucking said they were going to suck. I said they were going to suck. I fucking said it. All these fucking nerds, they're like, well, now that Io Komatsu's in charge, they got some real leadership at that team. Just because Io Komatsu looks the fucking part. Everyone's going on vibes. They're like, just because Gunther Steiner looks stupid, they just assume. And just because Gunther looks and acts and behaves stupidly on Drive to Survive, They
and our podcast.
assume that this fucking nerd is going to do a better job. Guess what? Haas fucking sucks. And you can't shine shit because, and I'm not even saying it's IO's fault. Like they don't necessarily have the funding that the other teams have.
Right.
Right? So Haas is struggling right now. And
yeah, when Ollie Behrman's when he came in for quali and his gearbox didn't work, I was like, oh, if Gunter Steiner was running this team right now, the discourse online would be insane. But where is the discourse? Like, but what? No one's batting an eye because everyone's just saying, oh, well, that it happens with Io running the team. It's like, no, that would have been a classic. What the hell's going on over there? This guy doesn't know what he's doing. But Io doesn't get that treatment. No, Haas is trash, dude. Haas is trash.
They suck, and I'm so fucking happy. And by the way, I said they were going to finish 9th. Nobody else said they were going to finish. I said they were going to finish 9th, but apparently Steak is a better team. Although I was like, part of me was like, I was like, Ocon could have put it on Paul, but he was like, is my teammate out? I'll just do this. So I was a little skeptical. I'll just finish here. But yeah. But I think it was interesting because like Lawson struggled.
Mm-hmm.
Bortoletto outqualified his team. It was kind of a tale of two halves because, Bortoletto, Behrman sucked. Lawson struggled. Bortoletto was through. Doohan was good.
Mm-hmm.
Doohan was right there.
Yep.
And Hadjar was good. But then come race day, there was all the rookies that were good.
Yes.
On Saturday or Friday, whatever the fuck it was,
were
then bad, and then a lot of the rookies that were, well, just Antonelli really, just Antonelli, who was kind of nowhere in qualifying, was good.
Yep.
So it's kind of hard to get a barometer.
Well, apparently Antonelli is like a wet weather specialist. Apparently, like in his junior career, whenever it's rained, he has like completely dominated fields. So apparently, the wet is where he's going to excel. But it certainly was a welcome to the NFL moment for those rookies. I mean, Hadjar, before the race even begins, crashing was absolutely brutal.
Yeah, that was crazy. I went to a watch party.
Mm-hmm.
I went to a watch party, which was fun, but kind of stupid because I was like, I don't know what's happening and I have to talk about this. So then I had to watch it again. But not for other people, it was fine. Some guy recognized me, dude.
Okay.
Well, a few people recognized me and were nice. Some guy recognized me and he went, "You're the guy from TikTok." And I went, and I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "I don't like you guys." And then that was fine. But he waved. He did this to my face. He waved in my face.
Ooh.
And I was like, that is so rude.
Yeah.
To just, first of all, why say anything if you don't like me? But to wave in my face. It was almost like I was on his For You profile. I was on his For You page. And he was swiping me away. Like, but we're in real life. You can't do that to somebody. I'm a real person. You can't swipe me away like in Tinder in real life. It's fucking crazy. Anyway, it was crazy. He was out, and we had to explain to a girl didn't really know. I was like, dude, that's like hurting your ankle, like getting off the bus. That was crazy. Yeah. It's nuts. Then the race started. Then Doohan got knocked out. I was like, this is a horror story for Doohan. Then they cut to his father. I was like, this is misery porn. Misery porn.
Yeah.
Bankers, this episode is brought to you by BetMGM. The season is about to start, and there are a bunch of picks that you can make. Make your 2025 season predictions. Put some money on it with BetMGM, and come see what's new at BetMGM. You can score bigger when you win with boost tokens, odd boost tokens, and more. Even if your bet doesn't hit, we've got you covered with no sweat tokens. Sign up with BetMGM today, and you'll have access to countless betting options, including new look, same-game parlays, teasers, live bets, and so much more. Take advantage of these offers.
Done later today, or is this just like a father who's devastated and feels bad for his child?
It's probably closer to the latter. I mean,
yeah.
I think
the spiritual side.
I think it switches when they get to a certain level.
Right.
Because even Jos
Fucking
Verstappen, he's like, well, I don't tell my son how to drive. He's at the certain. I think once they reach a certain level, what can the dad even say?
Right.
When they're boys, it's different.
And if your dad's not there, dude, you always have Anthony Hamilton there to console you, dude.
That was incredible.
Incredible.
Imagine being consoled by Lewis Hamilton's father while you're crying.
Especially because Hadjar idolizes, he grew up idolizing Lewis. In that little rookie roundtable that Laura Winter, she talked with all the rookies.
Yes,
they were all making fun of Isaac because when when they all took the 2025 picture, Hadjar was sweating profusely and he ran his hands through his hair and was sweating, and then Lewis was like, "Oh, Isaac," and then he jumped down eagerly and shook Lewis's hand, and then realized that his hand was full of sweat, and all the rookies were trolling Isaac because they knew that this moment meant so much to him, and he ruined it by having sweaty ass palms because Isaac loves Lewis Hamilton. So for him to be, he's
a sweetie. He's a sweetie.
He's a sweet kid. He wears his heart on his sleeve. He was crying through the you always know when they're crying through the helmet because they have their hands in the eye socket. They're doing this. It's that's the helmet universal symbol of crying. He was crying in his full suit, walking through the thing, and it was so Hunger Games-ish, where they're the camera guys filming him, and all these people are filming him as he's in the lowest, most. I felt so bad for him in that moment, and then for Anthony Hamilton, Papa Hamilton, to come over, hug him, and give him that moment was beautiful. It was really really powerful. We're not there yet, but Daddy of the Day, obviously.
It's obviously
Daddy of the Day is Anthony Hamilton.
That was fucking crazy. But I can imagine. What does Anthony Hamilton say? He goes, well, no, Lewis actually got P3 on his debut. 3.5 hours
is a long
Lewis actually
time,
crushed
bro.
it his first.
We've
his
all
rookie
been,
year
well,
went
not
off.
Lewis. Lewis hasn't been here specifically, but
GG no re. GG no re.
Lewis's rookie season went off kind of without a hitch, actually. Kind of was the most impressive thing that's ever happened. But hey, keep your head up, kid.
Yeah, he tied Alonso, and you're struggling against Yuki Tsunoda, but that's okay. It's different strokes.
Hey, Yuki Tsunoda better than Fernando Alonso, if you ask me.
Yes, exactly.
There was some discourse around Hadjar's crying. Brundle was kind of saying, back in the day, Frank Williams, no one would be consoling this kid right now. He'd be getting an earful about how, you fucked this thing up. And he was like, but that's, it's different times, generations change. That was one thing. But then Helmut Marko said that he said it was a bit embarrassing. Quote, it was a bit embarrassing about Hadjar's emotions after the race.
Why? Just from a management standpoint, just first thing.
Yes.
Why are you just pouring salt in the wound of this kid who already made a mistake?
Right.
That doesn't seem like a good idea. What in the press, but
hey, it's me working in the background.
that's just old school toxic
right
bullshit that I think is corrosive to masculinity in general.
Fuck yeah, dude! Speak on it, dude.
Yeah.
I think it's a different. I think it's also a different. Yeah, I think it's also a different situation now than it was then. Back in the day, it was these teams made no money, people were dying left and right. It was just a different kind of scenario and time period. The context was so much different. Now it's these guys are kind of sheltered. They're in so much more of a bubble where the only thing in their life is this. F1 drivers back in the day used to sometimes have other jobs. They would race in different series. They would race at F2, F1, Le Mans. They would do all kinds of other shit. And F1 was just one piece of their puzzle. And now it's these kids are so sequester their entire life from the age of 5 is about this thing. You know, like
Jenny points out they also they also usually weren't that young.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, they were in their fucking
Senna
40s.
went to business school. Senna went to business school and was like, you know what? Actually, I want to be a race car driver. You know,
totally.
They started later.
And Senna was very emotional. Senna was completely emotional. He was actually I feel like one of the first drivers to like put his emotions out there in a way that people, hadn't really seen before. But anyway, that wasn't the only thing that Marco was talking about in the press. He was also talking shit about Gabriele Bortoleto, which honestly, when he said it,
now he's like, I stand by everything I said.
Yeah. Now that when he said it, I was kind of like, oh, trying to find a little piece of my brain which is giving him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, oh, well, he's backing Hadjar. He's like, my rookie's better than these other rookies. Like, Bortoleto ain't all that. Neither is Doohan. Like, these guys ain't all that. Like, I back Isaac. He's my guy. But then he's shitting on Isaac as well. And then Bortoleto fired back, dude. He was like, I'm going to prove him wrong. And listen, the race, it's wet. I have some grace for these rookies in the wet. But out-qualifying Nico Hülkenberg in Q1 was
that was impressive. And Doohan got into what, Q2? He did pretty. He qualified. Yeah. He was 13th on the grid. He did pretty well considering.
Yeah.
But what's crazy is my neighbor's into F1, and it's crazy because he asked me in a casual way. So like, what do you think of this season? And just to like in a casual conversation, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, but it's like, unless I'm screaming into a microphone, there's no joy there, or I can't do it. Right. I was like, why can't you just have a normal talk with another person? But he was like, which one of the rookies are you eyeing? Which one of the rookies look good to you? And I feel like it's kind of like in a war movie. In a war movie, there's always a new crop of reinforcements come in.
Yeah.
And the grizzled veteran is like, I'm not going to learn your name. Why am I going to get to know you? You're just going to get blown up.
Right.
Why do I got to learn who the new guy is? It's like, I'm not getting attached to any of these guys. Who knows?
Right.
Let me wait. It's like, I feel like following guys in F2 and F3 is such a recipe for pain.
Yeah, sure. Like Paul Aaron. It sucks to be a Paul Aaron fan.
Dude,
that sucks.
Yeah, I was gonna say Logan. It sucks to be a Logan. Imagine like being like invested in Logan Sargent's journey. How depressing is that,
dude? Logan Sargent went toe to toe with Oscar Piastri.
Yes,
it came down to the last race.
Yes.
I don't know.
Those were the guys, and now where the fuck is Logan Sargent?
The Red Flags podcast.
He's now fully out of motorsports.
I just need something in the background.
You can't follow him. He's
I was desperate.
He's nowhere to root for him except on Instagram having dinner or something. So it's just such a fool's errand to
growing out of the fucking.
Yeah. But these rookies, they were so heralded. They're like, this class of rookies, and it's just like
Yeah.
It's a fucking bloodbath, dude.
Truly.
It's a fucking, as Chris Rock would say, grand opening, grand closing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a tough debut for those boys. I mean, in the wet, in Australia.
Oh, wow, that got rid of that really well.
Dude. The white lines. It's like, can we put some grain on the white lines? Is it that hard to put some little bumps on the white lines so that they don't just slide off track? But no, it was like dun 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 dun. I mean, Doohan said like all the talk around Doohan is that he's going to, be replaced by Franco Colapinto come 5 races into the season unless he has some type of spectacular performance and he crashes lap 1, and it's just like, well, you sealed your fate right there. If your fate wasn't already sealed, you're done.
The internet was like, well, it's time to get Colapinto in. Yeah, there's a safe pair of hands right there.
Yeah.
There's a guy who...
Yeah, there's a guy... If we remember, Brazil last year, he crashed during a safety car, I'm pretty sure.
All the people that were just typing in, yep, it's time to get a responsible guy in there.
Yeah.
It's like, that guy is all cock and balls.
Yeah.
That guy is good for at least 2 DNFs a year.
Yeah.
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, he's quick. He's talented, he's quick, but not putting it into the wall is not necessarily his strong suit.
I'm pretty sure he crashed during a safety car last year in Brazil. I'm pretty sure.
I think he did.
Pretty sure.
He did.
Yeah.
I think
So
he
I
did.
mean, I love Colapinto, but I don't think that he's the next coming over Jack Doohan. I think they're probably somewhat akin to each other.
He's not the second coming of Guan Yu Zhou, who just kind of keeps it out of the wall. You know what I mean?
Right,
Safe
right.
pair of
Always
hands.
safe pair of hands.
Always
that is
safe.
true.
Safe pair of hands.
But dude, didn't have a safe pair of hands.
Carlos Sainz. Dude, I shrieked. Everybody else horrified in the bar. I squealed with delight. Squealed with delight. A bunch of horrified. There's so many Sainz fans out there, dude. Bunch of horrified faces turned to me.
Yeah,
and then a few people were like, "Oh, it's the red flags guy." Like immediately recognized me. Dude, the Sainz fans are so delusional. They were cheering when they cut to him in street clothes.
Yeah.
I was like, "What is happening?"
Guess what? He did look good in those street clothes.
He did look good in the jeans.
Also, you will not catch Carlos Sainz dead wearing red right now. He's not wearing red at all. Everything is white and blue. The dude is like, that's the old me. This is the new me. This is the new generation of Carlos Sainz. Now he looks worse in blue and